They also saw ghosts and other spirits.
He didn't say, it's my personal conviction that it is this. He said, we already know what these things are and that they're demonic. And now you got Tucker saying the same people who are seeing aliens are also seeing ghosts and spirits, and yet they're not putting it together.
Wow, we've got some really cool information tonight. I got my buddy Mikey here from Little Light Studios. We have both done a documentary on this, and it's really interesting. But what's happened tonight is some new information that's come out. And what had happened was Sun, name of a magazine company, they 4 years ago fought with the government to try to get 1,500 pages of UFO documents out into the media. And they finally received that just recently. And what has come out from those documents is just incredible. And it's kind of finally leaking out to all the different news organizations. And people are just, it's blowing people's mind right now. In fact, the Fox just had through Tucker Carlson, I think it is, right, Mikey? Tucker Carlson?
Tucker, I can't remember his last name, but yeah.
Yeah, he had a clip about these documents, and they focused on one in particular thing and had Lou Elizondo on the film. We're going to look at this, we're going to discuss it, and we're going to pause it in different spots and kind of go over what's going on right now in this strange normal world we're in.
So for close to 80 years, people who ask questions about UFOs are written off as deranged conspiracy mongers. Oh, shut up about UFOs. Then we learned about something called the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. It was an operation at the Pentagon, cloaked from public scrutiny, that studied UFO sightings for a very long time, and it was completely real, because those sightings are real. The Defense Intelligence Agency has just released that program's 2010 report on UFOs, and among other things, the document tells us that the government can prove that UFO sightings have caused radiation burns, paralysis, and brain damage. The report also says that some people who saw UFOs experienced, quote, perceived time suspension.
What in the world? I mean, this is straight out of science fiction, isn't it?
Yeah, burns, brain damage, and stopping time, manipulating time.
I know. What? I mean, if I feel like I'm going through a movie, and I think it's going to get even more crazy as time goes on, as people find out about this. But it gives more evidence to me to understand what these things are, because I mean, even Marneau said in his book that when an angel appeared to him, not to him, but to his satanic priest. This Marneau, if you don't know, watch the documentary Starfall or Mikey's documentary Disclosed. It's both are phenomenal. And we kind of go over what Marneau talks about in the Bible, but together is very interesting because Marneau was a part of a secret society that really showed what's going to happen at the end of time regarding these UAP incidences. So what's really interesting about this is that the satanic priest had one of these things appear to them, bright, round orb, and it caused him to lose his eyesight for a little while he was trying to dial a phone. It was really interesting. I think I might throw that in here, the snippet on what it actually talks about. It's really fascinating. But we're going to continue on with this clip because this is a clip that we're kind of talking about in this episode real quick.
They also saw ghosts and other spirits.
You just can't get far enough in this video without talking about each of the things. So now we got burns, right, Mikey? Yeah. We've got ghosts and other spirits. We got time dilation,
brain damage. That's interesting to me because if something can manipulate your brain, I just think about, in the biblically, I think we can say that angels have the power to implant memories and things like that, implant ideas into your mind, give you visions. And I think that's a big thing, what we see with people that have experiences of boarding ships and things like that. Or
absolutely.
I've even seen documentaries about past lives, and like they make it so believable because a child is telling you these things that there's no way this child would know about, of his past lives and stuff. And it's all just demonic deceptions.
Right. Yeah. I think they often refer to that as regression, hypnosis regression, or regression hypnosis. where they put people in these states, and then what they think happens is that they remember their past lives, but there's no such thing as your past life. So what happens is it's a vision that happens through a demonic spirit. Anyway, we're totally rabbit trailing, but it's totally relevant to this. So let's continue on with the video.
In all, that report lists 42 cases of adverse effects from medical files and another 300 adverse effects from unpublished cases, whatever that means. Lou Elizondo knows what it means because he used to run the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. We're happy to have him on tonight. Lou, thanks so much for coming on. So, I mean, this was a feature of people's firsthand accounts going back 50 years to the 60s. You know, I saw this thing and I had these physical effects. I guess that turns out to be real. Tell us about these effects.
Yeah, Tucker, actually, it's even more than that. This is not, you know, the notion of where, let's say, grandma saw some lights in the backyard. These are military eyewitnesses. In some cases, they're fighter pilots or they're security personnel that have come up close and personal with a UAP, or I guess in the vernacular, UFO. And in some cases, they have sustained some sort of medical trauma, something that can be looked at and quantified and qualified and measured as some sort of biological effect, that they didn't suffer these consequences until they came up close and personal to a UFO. And by the way, let me just say, this isn't pseudoscience. You know, for you're absolutely right in your intro. For many years, we've been told, oh, you know, this is silly and whatnot, and this topic is really not to be taken seriously.
I find that interesting because, Mikey, you always have an exact spiel on how you talk about this, especially when you talk about so you give the card away. We have these little cards that you have the QR code on it. You can scan, you can give these cards away to see the documentary. And what do you always say, Mikey? You always say swamp gas and...
Yeah, just a year ago, the military was saying that there's no such thing as UFOs. It can all be explained away. It's usually swamp gas or weather balloons. But now, just a short year later, they're saying, oh, yeah, we've been seeing them every day for years. That doesn't, you know, you can't coexist. Those two ideas don't exist. So it makes me wonder, why are they changing their tune now? But with him specifically, he had a higher up tell him that don't look into these things because we already know what they are. He didn't say, it's my personal conviction that it is this. He said, we already know what these things are and that they're demonic. And now you got Tucker saying the same people who are seeing aliens are also seeing ghosts and spirits, and yet they're not putting it together.
I know. If you're seeing the paranormal, and we see this a lot, and we talked a little bit about on this channel about Skinwalker Ranch, and people are like, why are you seeing UFOs with spirits and ghosts? I don't understand how these two things go together. Well, we understand how they go together. Exactly. Christians understand how they go together, and it's going to become a much bigger problem later on. And it's really fascinating. But I think we're only halfway through the video, so let's listen to the rest.
Look, I was part of the program. I ran the program for a better part of 8 years on this topic. It is absolutely real. And now finally, because of the pressure put by Congress and people like you in the media, finally our government is beginning to become more transparent about this topic and tell the truth about this topic.
So he says, finally telling the truth about this topic. And isn't that interesting?
Yeah, are they telling the truth? Maybe the truth that they believe. You know, there's a part of me that wonders if these people are just as deceived as others, you know, but I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that the higher ups are truly deceived about what these things are?
You know, Lou Elizondo has said previously that they his higher ups were saying, you know, like you just said, we know what these things are. They are demonic. Have you read your Bible, Lou? Do you know what these things are? And these things are breaking into airspaces that are forbidden to fly in, you know, no fly zones, and they're realizing that they can't do anything about it, so they just let it happen and go back and forth. If these things were hiding, why do people think they're hiding? Because they're obviously trying to be seen. They want to be talked to. It's just the tree of knowledge of good and evil all over again.
That is a good, interesting point. You know, that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. There's nothing we can do to stop these things. We can't shoot them down. We can't do anything. So what can they do except just allow them to go on? But then you got people like Lou, who's rejecting what his higher up is saying about what they are and just interacting with them. So it's like, man, where is this going to lead?
Exactly. Let's find out.
In a way that I wasn't at liberty to have the conversation 4 years ago when you and I first started talking with each other.
Yeah, so I'm getting the idea that when they don't want to hear what you have to say, they call you a conspiracy monger. These physical effects, some of which are serious, does the Pentagon believe these were intentionally inflicted on people, or they were just byproducts of the experience?
You know, Tucker, that's a fantastic question. Look, the bottom line is, if I've never seen a microwave oven before, and let's say I didn't know how to use it, and I happen to put my hand or unfortunately, let's say my head too close to a microwave oven when it's being turned on, chances are there's going to be some sort of negative biological consequence. Same holds true if I go to let's say an average airport. I just took a 737 today, and if I'm in the cockpit or I'm in the aircraft, there's no real threat. But if I stand behind the engine when the engine is, firing up, chances are I'm going to get burned. I'm going to lose my hearing. There are medical consequences. The question is it deliberate? Is it a product of the technology? Yes. Or is it a product of something else?
I got to pause it right there, because he's half right. He's dealing in half truths right now. Because they are. It is a product of this being. Yeah, they do produce quite a rays of radiation, probably, and light, but these things can transform into anything they want. They can become a human or look like a human, just like you and me. They are created to be this, probably by default. We don't know for sure, but in the Bible it talks about them being bright. It talks about them being as lightning. Their clothes were super bright, but they can also reduce that brightness and come down. So the fact that people are getting burned by these things, it's all for show. It's all to cause news about this, to get the word out that these things want to be talked to. These things want attention.
Yeah, they're creating the delusion that they want to be publicized. They want the news to tell everybody that there's alien beings coming, That's the whole story that they're propagating, the demonic beings themselves. And like you're saying, we have accounts in the Bible where Satan can transform himself as a serpent. So we know that these beings can change shape, and people see orbs all the time, so that would be what people see looking like a UFO a lot of times. These things split off into two. They make 90-degree turns at thousands of miles an hour, and yet if you were inside of something like that, if you were operating a vehicle that could make a 90-degree turn at 9,000 miles an hour, you would slam against the wall. Like, there's no way you could survive these things. And the speeds that they're clocked at defy physics. Like, literally, particles in the atmosphere would just destroy a ship at that speed. It's not even physically possible.
Yeah. And there are examples in the Bible where angels have appeared to men, where Abraham and Sarah appeared, two men came to see Sodom and Gomorrah, and they appeared as men. They didn't appear as glowing orbs, but they can. And so we have many examples in the Bible where they can. Rabbit trailing again, but let's get back on this. This is fascinating stuff.
And we think right now, and again, let me just preface, preliminarily speaking, it's probably just a consequence of the advanced technology.
Final question. I've asked you this before, but in the face of the mounting evidence, it doesn't really seem plausible to suggest these are aircraft from foreign militaries at this point, does it?
Look, we've been looking at this for a long time, and if anyone seems to suggest that China or Russia back in 1950s had the ability to travel at hypersonic speeds and do 90-degree turns in midair after doing 8,000 miles an hour, then you're looking at the greatest intelligence failure this country has ever had, eclipsing that of 9/11, by the way, by an order of magnitude. So no, I think it's fair to say at this point, suffice it to say, this is probably not some sort of adversarial technology we're dealing with.
Right. It's not human. So we should let that marinate for a minute and think about what that means. Not that I can get my head around it, but I appreciate all the work you've done on this. Lou Elizondo, thank you.
Interesting terminology.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Very interesting.
I think it is an adversary, a spiritual adversary. Man, it's just crazy that we're actually having these conversations, like legitimate military, mainstream media news saying these are not human. We are having interactions with things that are not human made. What? I mean, I don't even think this is being talked about enough, especially in the church, but also I mean, random Joe Schmo, he probably says he believes in aliens, but do they even know that this conversation is being had on mainstream media?
Well, that's the point of this video, is to try to get this information out and hopefully make a lot of people realize that this is not what they think it is. This is not something they should just, hey, let's dabble with this and talk with this thing, because if it produces paranormal activity, if you're starting to see ghosts around it, if you're starting to see some strange events that happen with it, chances are it's not a good thing, even if it says it is.
Right. And I've even seen a connection where people in the UFO world, like when they go to the conventions and stuff, and you hear their testimonies, sometimes they describe these things as just looking like humans and stuff too. Like I remember one guy said that he was approached by a naked Asian looking woman, and he said it was an alien. And it was like, how are we seeing the, and another thing to talk about is we have this perception that ghost means holographic, like you can stick your hand through it, that's not physical in any way. What do you think about that when it comes to like spiritual beings or demonic beings? Do you think that they're translucent and you can put your hand right through them, or what do you think about that?
Oh, well, I mean, that's the idea Hollywood has portrayed, is these translucent sheet over your head type beings with black eyes that kind of go boo in the night. But I mean, what we're going to see, and what we have seen through examples of non classified stuff, people have come out and say, hey, I've had my relatives appear to me. I've had people appear to me, and they were physical. You could feel their heartbeat. You could feel their breath. I mean, these things. Murnau talks about how they love, this is one of their pastimes. They love to pretend to be and act exactly like someone else. They've had a lifetime to do it. They've had 6,000 years to do it. And so they've perfected the ability to mimic not only the voice inflections, but the exact persona of someone's personality.
Now think about this. You mentioned that angels appear as men, and they pulled Lot and his wife out of the city, so they were physical. When Jesus resurrected in his resurrected body, he was like, touch me, I'm physical. He ate, but at the same time he could teleport and things like that. Didn't he walk through a door, like a closed door, to meet the disciples and things like that after his resurrection? So I think the angelic beings have a body more like that can travel at fast speeds, can appear and disappear on radar. That's what they're saying. They're saying these physical things are appearing on radar. You can't detect a ghostly translucent thing, but you can detect something physical, and let's say it disappears right off radar.
Right.
It
it's
appears
not only
and disappears.
It's not only a disappearing off radar, but it's going into the water, sometimes without splashes. And so how does that happen? How in the world can you go down through they call it transmedium, I think is what they said, because it can go fly around submarines. This is all declassified stuff too. Submarines are saying, hey, we have noticed that there are things around here, and we're told by our superiors to avoid it and continue to avoid it, go around those things that we know are they don't call them UAPs, they call them something else that's another acronym that's underwater. Instead of aerial, it's underwater vehicle of some kind. Strange stuff.
Interesting. Do you have a video on that?
I do. I think Lou Elizondo talks a lot about it, and I forget exactly where I heard it, but I'll have to pull that out, because a lot of these things are seeing, especially off the coast of the Pacific coast of Mexico right now. But I'll have to pull that out and try to find where I saw that. I think it was in one of the original documentaries that the Nimitz was talking about, but I have to look back on that a little bit.
Man, we are living in some interesting times. I never thought I'd see the day where this was just commonplace, talked about mainstream. I've always been intrigued by this idea, this concept. I've always believed that there was life on other planets that we're visiting because of just the evidence I saw as a kid, the pictures, the videos, all that. I just believed that it existed, but God really opened my eyes in 2012 that there was going to be a big deception, that this was going to play a big role in Bible prophecy. Mm-hmm. And man, it feels like it just rapidly got here.
Yeah, very fast. And I think it's going to go even faster in these next few years. But man, I just want to tell everyone, go watch Mikey's documentary. It's called Disclosed, Deceiving the World. It's on Little Light Studios YouTube channel. I'll put a link in the description. I'll put a link in pin a comment to the top too. And Starfall, which is on this channel as well. Both of us have about a 35-minute documentary. It's so weird that it's almost exactly the same because we made them separately. We didn't even know what each other were putting into the documentary, but we had these ideas and we both rolled with it, and it turned out pretty good. So you guys both have to see it to get caught up, if you haven't already, on what in the world is going on in this strange normal life of ours. But later we're going to have a much longer talk, Mikey and I, on this channel, and kind of flesh out exactly what's going on here, and tell a little bit of the backstory behind this stuff too. It's really fascinating, and you want to stick around for that. So make sure you subscribe, ring that little bell, and I'll see you soon.